Good morning, good morning. Let me have your attention, everyone, and let's get started. First of all, what is the FDIC all about? Who knows a little bit of history and who can enlighten us or inform others what's all the FDIC all about? Any volunteer? Okay, Jeff.
Food, drink, and intelligent conversation.
Food, drink, and intelligent conversation. That's a pretty good slogan, isn't it? Okay. Up in Kansas, when we go pheasant hunting, there's a VFW hall out in the country, literally, and when you go into the VFW hall, over the pool table was the deal: food, drink, and intelligent conversation. So I ordered it from Kansas, okay? Unfortunately, the VFW hall is now closed. So, but if everybody looks at the calendar, okay, I think it's been about 7 years that we started this forum and meeting on a quarterly basis. Now let's talk a moment, what is our purpose? We want a forum which is not political, not religious, where businessmen and women can join together. Number one, get acquainted. You know, if you shake somebody's hand, our friend has said it's worth 25 votes for you candidates and office holders. If you have a yard sign, it's worth about 2 votes. So a handshake has always been the door opener and getting to know people. So our primary function is to get acquainted. Our future leaders on school boards, city councils, or the county, okay, may be someone in this room. All right, so that's the purpose of it. Now, we're all here. Where's Rob Kimball? Rob, okay. Rob is my partner in this venture, and I'm going to ask him to come up and give a special blessing for our group.
He says we're partners. He does all the work, and I say the prayer. So, I mean, let's give a big hand to Richard for doing all the All right, let's say, if you would, just bow your head, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for, most importantly, your love and your mercy and your grace. Thank you for this time here. We ask it to be that you be with us and make this pleasing to you. Father, thank you for the leadership in this room, people who are committed to serving. Help continue to reinforce with them the work that they do is so important to you. And Father, we ask that as we go about this meeting today and as we leave, that we reflect you in all the things that we say and do. Will we be the light to people around us, not the darkness and not the hate, but continue to be the light for people. We thank you for this food that you provide, help to nourish our body. We ask all this in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Now, the second part of our program here, let's start on the back table. Rob, in fact, let's start at your table, and everybody stand up and identify yourself and tell us what you're famous at.
Rob Temple, I'm famous at being Richard's friend.
Corey Homer, so commercial real estate here in McKinney, learned from McKinney High School.
Cherry box, killing the time.
Steve Lee, Kansas, Little White.
Did a side 3, half associates on civil engineering.
Bill Cox, Cherry Cox Company here in McKinney, also running for mayor.
Tracy Frazier with KBC.
Frederick Frazier married to Tracy Frazier.
So, over here. Hang on, hold on.
Mike Crawford.
Okay. Tina Stelmicki, and I'm the CEO of the Wiley Area Chamber.
Now, wait a minute, Jeff, speak up, young lady.
Oh gosh, I thought I did. I'm Tina Stelmicki, and I'm the CEO of the Wiley Area Chamber of Commerce.
Bring those out, city council, factory, owner of factory, lot shop, or entire college.
Rich Baker, which means I'm not a poor cook, I'm a rich baker, and I do nothing, I do it very well, thank you very much.
Jenna, Covington, North Texas Municipal Water District. Happy to be with y'all this morning.
Randy Rowland, retired Assistant Chief from McKinney, Texas, and I'm also a board member of the North Texas Municipal Water District, representing my hometown of Richardson.
I'm Harold McLeod, here at McKinney with First United Bank.
Luke Geralyn, Chairman for the Merchant Chamber of Commerce, and also representing Lola's Flowers.
Good morning, John Myers, business owner, Plano, Texas.
Good morning, Randy Johnson, Judge, County Court of Law No. 5.
I'm Mark Rutledge, I'm the CEO of Mozart Electric. We are a developer of hydrogen infrastructure projects, including municipal solid waste and wastewater, extracting hydrogen and other useful materials.
Wendell Brock, Yield Financial Advisors.
Kever Willingham, I own WG Law and WG Title, and I'm running for mayor too.
Cam McCall, Collin Central Appraisal District.
I'm Bob Solisek, recently retired, don't know when I had time to work.
Russ Jeffers, retired, briefly on the TI.
Blair Beck, recently retired, Alfred Harris.
Sammy?
Good morning, Sammy Knapp, Constable Precinct 3, Airport.
Susan Fletcher, honored to serve you on your Collin County Commission.
I'm Scott Elliott with 100 McKinney.
Jeray Feltus, I'm the CEO of Home Family Services of Texas. I also have the honor of serving as the mayor pro tem right here in McKinney, and I'm up for re-election in District 3. Happy to be with y'all this morning.
Hello, I'm David Kelly. I'm the Government Affairs and Special Projects Manager at the North Texas Municipal Water District.
Good morning, everybody. Paul Grimes with the City of McKinney.
Good morning, everybody. Michael Jones, Market President of B1 Bank, and representing City Council of McKinney at large.
Earl Milstead, Keller Williamsville, in McKinney.
I'm Scott Geralyn, Collin County Tax Assessor Covington.
Michael Slaughter, I'm a business owner here in Collin County, and I'll be running for the Precinct 2 County Commissioner seat in 26.
Ladies.
I'm Sue Reeves, retired. I'm famous for being Richard's fan. I'm Royce Miles, retired high school principal, 42 years, and I'm famous for being Sue Reeves for
I'm Sue Reeves from Edgewater.
I'm Martha Will, retired Air Force.
Ryan Will, retired Director of Flight Operations for American Airlines and F-15 pilot a long time ago before that.
Mike Lawson with the Boeing Company and Friend of America.
Geralyn, Kever, I represent McKinney on the North Texas Municipal Water District Board.
Good morning, I'm Kelly Rudiger with Russell Residential Real Estate, and I'm also here on behalf of 2025 Leadership McKinney.
Richard Dotson Jr., his son.
Hey, I'm Brad Cox, I'm the senior pastor of High Point Church in McKinney.
All right, let's give everybody a round of applause.
This young lady has been a tremendous help in organizing today's meeting. Okay? And how many years has it been here?
Oh, we were just going back and forth, Richard, you and I, but since you guys started, and I think that was in November of 2016, so almost 10 years. Can we give it up for Rob and Richard Dodson? We've covered issues like the North Texas Council of Governments and the RTC. We've heard on the election process in Collin County. We've heard from our commissioners. We've heard from our mayor. We've heard from the Workforce Commission. We've heard from lots of different areas, lots of different issues. And this has always been a very simple and informative forum. And I'm thankful.
Trying to do it, but we're addressing the issues that our citizens, the right citizens of Collin County are important to do. That's our purpose. Not political, not religious, but a forum where we we can speak freely, but get the facts, you know, COVID-19, as we call it, we never know what the truth is, right? So here, hopefully we get a source of information and get the facts, right? You want to introduce our speaker?
I do, and let me invite her up to the table. I'm probably calling her right in the middle of breakfast, but as she makes her way up, Jenna Covington makes her way up. In the way of introduction and preface, I thought I'd kind of offer a few epitaphs on water. And one was, you can live without love, but you can't live with water. And another one was, I guess it was someone that is involved in the state in terms of our Texas and wildlife. He said that three most important natural resources to Texas are water, water, and water. But really more globally, if you think back in time, you think about ancient Greece and proximity to the Nile, you think of the Mesopotamians and their access to the Tigris and the Euphrates River, and the importance of water on our human culture and civilization. I mean, those proximities of those civilizations, and you have to include the Roman Empire and all their aqueducts, they thrived because of their access to water. Fast forward to our current issues, and you think about water scarcity, you think about water treatment, you think about water systems management, and these are our current issues, modern day issues. But really to drive it home, and I'm going to have to put my glasses on, I want to quote Rick Perry. Anybody listen to the State of the State Sunday from the Capitol? This is what he says about water. And this was said on Sunday. Water is so important in our state, I'm making it an emergency item this session, along with property tax relief and education and several other things. But here's what he said, moving on with water. We're going to put Texas on a path to have plenty of water for the next 5 decades. We'll make the largest investment in water in the history of the state of Texas. So he's on record in saying this is going to be a big legislative year for water. So this is live and current, and this is a great time to talk about water. Before I let Jenna talk, which is while you're here, I want to introduce David Kelly, and he's already introduced himself, but he's hyper busy in these days with the legislature and doing everything that he does, as he is in charge of, I want to get your title, you said it to me, David, but I think he's in charge of all government, manages all our government relations and also special projects for the district. And in McKinney, he's been active on the MCDC and lots of other areas, so I just want you to know I appreciate you, everything you do. With regards to the water district itself, I've been on the board for 3 or 4 years. Randy, thank you for being here and work alongside Randy. I also mentioned that there are 2 representatives for the members that serve on the board, and my colleague representing McKinney. I don't want to leave Don Pascal out because he also represents McKinney on the water district board. But the issues are very complex and urgent and so important to our region that it really takes a talented staff and individuals that can look at macro issues, can look at micro issues, can think years in advance, and can also think outside the box. And I gotta tell you, I don't just hand out compliments right and left, but I'm so impressed with leadership of our district at this point in time. And it's a great time to have a great slate of leaders, and Jenna is right there at the top as General Manager and Executive Director of the North Texas Municipal Water District. So I'm going to just pivot right here. You've got a microphone, Jenna. So first question, I've always wanted to be kind of an interviewer, so this is a lot of fun for me. You've been at the North Texas Municipal Water District in your role since May of 2021. So can you provide a backdrop for the audience, just in terms of your career and your experience prior to taking on this role?
I'd be happy to. Good morning. It's wonderful to be with y'all this morning. I have the honor and the privilege of serving you all with some services that you rely on each and every day, and I'm really thankful to have that opportunity to serve in that way alongside some really fantastic folks. So with water utilities across the North Texas area to deliver on services of water and wastewater. And then just last week, I celebrated my 10-year anniversary on staff at the Water District. So as a consultant, North Texas Municipal Water District became my largest client. And they had some really interesting challenges ahead. And there was a time of transformation within the organization that I knew as a consultant. I'd only be able to be involved with a little bit of it, and felt God leading me toward coming on staff. And so made that move now 10 years ago with my anniversary last week. So for the first 6.5 years of that, I served as the leader of wastewater operations and oversaw 13 wastewater treatment plants across the North Texas area, at that time serving around 1 million folks with services of wastewater. Now I have transitioned into executive director and serve everyone with the services of water, wastewater, and solid waste with a fantastic team of folks. Reporting to our board of directors, who, as Director Kever mentioned, is appointed by our member cities. So have 25 fantastic folks that I report to, and honored to serve alongside them in delivering those services.
Okay, so I'm expecting there are some folks in the region that don't really maybe have a full feel for the scale and the scope and the organization of the water district. So can you speak to those issues?
I'd be happy to. So water is something that we all rely on each and every day, but it's something that we don't really have to think too much about in our daily lives. But I'm thankful that there was some folks a long time ago that knew that that was something that was going to be important for our region. So I'd like to kind of start off, and when I'm talking about our organization, start off with kind of how we came to be. And essentially, when you go back to the late 40s, early 50s, we were a bunch of small rural communities and had very low populations and were dependent upon groundwater supplies of the day. And our community leaders knew those groundwater supplies were not going to ultimately meet our water needs as our population grew. And there was a really unique opportunity where the U.S. Corps of Engineers was constructing Levon Lake. And so the community leaders came together and said, hey, this is our chance. We can transition from groundwater supplies that aren't going to meet our needs to surface water to allow for our growth. And so in 1951, our original member cities came together and approached the state legislature. Let's see, it's not moving. Approached the state legislature to ask that North Texas Municipal Water District be formed. And through that, we were formed in the early 50s and then began delivering water in 56. At that time, we had 10 original member cities and the service population was 32,000 people. Since that time, we've doubled more than 6 times and now serve around 2.3 million folks. And we have also expanded our services to go beyond what was originally created of drinking water. At the request of our member cities, we expanded into wastewater services and solid waste services. All right, thank you, David. All right, so you can see our member cities listed here. We've added on 3 member cities over the decades. And there were really some visionary leaders back in the day that created us. So talking a little bit about the services that we offer. On the water side, we've got 7 drinking water plants, and we'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. But primarily our original hub and our largest is in Wiley, along Highway 78 and Brown, and we deliver a lot of water out of that Wiley complex there adjacent to Levon Lake. More recently, we brought Leonard Water Treatment Plant online as we brought on Bodark Lake, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well. So for water, we serve around 2.3 million folks. For wastewater services, we've got 13 wastewater treatment plants located across the North Texas area, and we serve about 1.4 million for wastewater. So there's a number of folks that either have their own wastewater treatment plants or communities that have their own plants, or there's folks that are on septic. So that's the solid waste side of things, we've got 3 transfer stations with the 4th one in the works and a large landfill up in Melissa. So for those of you who reside here in McKinney, we provide wholesale services to the city, so work a lot with Paul Grimes here, for water, wastewater, and solid waste. And then the retail services are provided by your community. So we contract with cities, and then cities provide that retail services to their community. In terms of kind of a little bit more of the lay of the land in terms of water, here in the North Texas area, we've got something that is fairly unique, that we've got a number of really large regional providers. So this kind of gives you a little bit of a glimpse at kind of who serves what area of the Metroplex. And the Metroplex is very large now, estimating more than 200 communities and 7.5 million people here in the North Texas area. Our service area is the green portion, and you can see covers most of Collin County, much of Hunt, all of Rockwall, most all of Kaufman, and then touches a number of other counties. You see Dallas there in the center, and then to the north there's a gray portion. Upper Trinity Regional Water District provides services to a lot of the kind of Denton County areas. And then the very large blue is Tarrant Regional Water District. And so Tarrant's a little bit different than the others in that they provide raw water and then other people treat it before delivering it to their communities. But those are folks that we work with a whole lot. Water is very much a regional issue, and so the work that we're doing at the Water District is often in cooperation and coordination with other peer organizations across the North Texas area or across the state. So that's something that most folks probably don't think about, but there's a number of other regional providers here in the North Texas area.
You know, I didn't know that there was such a collegiality between water districts. And one thing that also I want to say on this, with regards to this slide, Jenna mentioned that the 3 core areas: water, wastewater, and solid waste. Not every regional water district provides those services, right? So
we are the only entity that I'm aware of that is a wholesale provider of those 3. It's very common for water and wastewater, but taking on solid waste is something that's unique.
it is unique, but just with regard to water, she mentioned the collegiality. I can't tell you how many times, and Randy, you'll attest to this, we get to our board meetings and we'll have an agreement with one of these entities to either share wetlands or cooperate on some kind of a strategic goal. So it's affirming to me when partnership isn't always the lay of the land, that these entities actually work together for efficiencies and just the benefit of the whole region.
Yeah. All right. So another thing that I thought you might be interested in is who knows where your water comes from? People know that. Where do y'all say water comes? Where does our water come from? Anybody want to speak out? Texoma, Levon, both right. Yeah. Soon to be Bodar. Soon to Bodar. Yes. Yeah. So y'all are on it. As I mentioned, we were founded starting off with delivering water out of Levon. So that's kind of our mothership. And then over the years, to keep up with the growth, we have added on additional water supplies, and more will be needed. So when we look at kind of where our water comes from, there's a number of places, and I know it's probably small for some, but there's a map over here on the right that kind of shows how our water supplies are all connected up. So Levon Lake is the original. We added on Jim Chapman, or Cooper, some people call it, a number of decades ago. So we share water with some other entities out of Cooper, or Chapman Lake, and that gets transferred through a pipeline and then flows into Levon Lake. Additionally, we get lake water from Texoma. Y'all probably heard about zebra mussels back in the day. So historically, we took water out of Texoma, dumped it into Sister Grove Creek, let it flow into Levon Lake, and then picked it up at our Wiley water treatment plant. When zebra mussels were discovered back in 2009 as invasive species, we had to change some things. And you may recall we built a very expensive pipeline to pipe that water directly into our water complex, and that's how that operates today. So we continue to make use of Texoma water. We also get water from Tawakoni. So Lake Tawakoni provides water to southern part of our service area. We also are big reusers of water. So when you think about the water that we have on Earth today, it's the same water that has been on Earth forever. And water recycles. And when we learn about in school the water cycle, you may not have learned about, but something that we implement on a daily basis is the engineered water cycle, where you're actually taking what was used water, cleaning it up, treating it, discharging it into our community's waterways as clean water, and then later picking it back up and again using it as drinking water, a drinking water source. So we're very thankful at the southern part of our service area to have a water reuse project that is the East Fork Reuse Project, or associated with it is the John Bunker Sands Wetlands Center, which is an education center adjacent to a 2,000-acre constructed wetlands, which is one of the largest constructed wetlands in the United States, where it naturally cleanses water through photosynthesis, through light, through settling, and achieves nutrient removal before further cleaning that water, sending it back to Lavon as an additional water supply. So water reuse is a major supply for us. And then we're very thankful to now have Bodark Lake online. So some of you have probably heard about Bodark Lake. It's been in the state water plan since the 80s, the original state water plan. We began working on Bodark Lake in earnest in 2003, really initiating the permitting process. That was a 15-year process to receive a permit to construct Bodark Lake. We started construction in 2018 and have now finished construction, began delivering water out of Bodark Lake a few years ago, and it has now filled this last summer and is open for recreational use. So it's a great win-win example of how we can meet the region's water needs and also provide a natural resource and an economic boom for Fannin County to the north. So a lot of excitement around Bodark Lake. It's been one of the things that's really cool about it is we partnered with a number of agencies, one of which is the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department had a goal of having it be one of the state's best fishing reservoirs. So through their Share Longer program, they put a lot of fingerlings into Bodark Lake, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And here in the first fishing season at Bodark, it's really been a gem for folks who are coming from across the state and even other states to fish Bodark. So a win-win for the community and for water supply. Our drinking water is delivered through a number of water plants that are in Whiteley. Leonard is the one associated with Bodark Lake, Bonham, and also down at Lake Tawakoni. All right.
Ready for the next one? Ready for the next one?
Sure.
Okay, so the North Texas Water District Board and district leaders focus on a lot of what we call big rock issues. And this has to do with future water supply. This has to do with new regulations, like we've got a big PFAS regulatory issue coming up in 2027, I believe, is when we're going to start reporting on that. We have, I'm going to get this number right, it's 1B, as in boy, a $1 billion capital projects plan that we're working through this year. That's a big number, y'all. That's a lot of work. So we talk a lot about building infrastructure and keeping up with growth. All those pipelines cost, these plants cost money, and this treatment costs. And we talk about things like cybersecurity. So we're not going to hit all of that and more. We're not going to hit all those today. So what I want to focus on right now is that future water supply. You've given us a good feel for what we have on tap today, but can you talk to us, Jenna, about where the district is looking, what kind of above ground, below ground opportunities and beyond. And then, that's on the supply side, but also impacting our water supply is tapering demand for conservation. So that's a lot to ask, but can you take us through some of those issues?
I would be happy to. Right, so the biggest challenge that we have at North Texas Municipal Water District is keeping up with the growth. The growth that we have in this region is just tremendous, and it provides for a really great place to live and have businesses, right? So it's something that we want to sustain. So in 2020, we passed a huge milestone of serving 2 million folks. When we got the census information from 2020, we had hit that and we were like, wow, that happened quicker than we thought. The rate of growth up to that point had been faster than we thought, but we were ready and we took on that challenge. Over the last several years, it has even amplified above what has been the growth rate that has been typical of the last decade or so. So between 2020 and 2024, we grew 300,000 people. So we've got 70 to 80,000 people a year moving into our service area, and none of them are bringing water with them. So we've got to figure out how to have the water available, have the water supply, have all the infrastructure in place to make sure that we're delivering that to those points of uses, make sure that their dirty water is accounted for and we're conveying that safely and treating it so that we're discharging clean water into our community's waterways. So when you look across our service area, we touch 10 different counties with our service area, but some of the biggest ones are the ones that are the fastest growing. So the census puts out information regularly on growth rates. And when they put out some information this last year and looked at what are some of the fastest growing communities in the United States, we hit those lists a couple of different ways. So when you look at it on a number of people added basis, we had 2 of the top 10 fastest growing counties in the United States. Collin County number 2 and Denton County number 6. When you look at it on a percentage basis, we also had 2 of the top 10 fastest growing counties in the United States with Kaufman County and Rockwall County. So it is just a tremendous amount of growth that's happening here in the North Texas area. This map here on the right kind of shows heat map of our service area and what their growth rates look like. When you look at that dark blue color, over a 3-year period, that's showing 100 to 300% growth in that community over a 3-year period. It is just amazing. Here in the McKinney area, it's a larger base population, so the percent's not as high, but with that larger base population, we're still looking at 6 to 10%. So it is just tremendous, and that keeps us challenged. Something I say a lot to our folks at the office is, it's a good thing we like to be challenged. So to meet those needs over the next several years, there's a number of projects. Director Kever talked about we have a huge capital program. Last fiscal year, we delivered on the largest capital program we've ever delivered on in a single year, and that was $1 billion. We're again this year looking at $1 billion investment in infrastructure in our capital program. And our reality is our rates are going up to accommodate those capital needs to keep up with the growth. In the current year, about 80% of our capital needs are to keep up with the growth, and about 20% are aging infrastructure related. So we've got to reinvest in that infrastructure to keep it operating and maintained the way it needs to be to continue that reliable service. When we look out over the next 10 years to keep up with the water needs, it's about a $5 billion investment. So we're not anticipating $1 billion every year into the future, but we're definitely hitting a peak right now. These are a few examples of the types of projects that we're doing to keep up with water supply. So we brought Leonard Water Treatment Plant online just a few years ago, delivering 70 million gallons of water per day. That's a large water plant. Like most communities, their single water plant is 70 MGD. So that's a good sized plant. But before it was started up, we had already initiated design to double it. And it's now under construction to double it. So we have ongoing construction work to double the Leonard Water Treatment Plant. We're also doing the final expansion of our Wiley complex that will increase its final, the whole Wiley complex to 940 million gallons per day. With those two projects, we will be delivering or have capacity of over 1 billion gallons of water per day. To my knowledge, that's the second largest drinking water provider in the country. So Chicago, up on the Navy Pier, has a larger water plant, but to my knowledge, that Wiley complex will be the second largest water plant in the country. Bodark Lake, we are expanding our raw water pumping to be able to fully utilize the water out of Bodark Lake. We are looking at building a deeper intake in Lavon Lake. So as a water provider, our concerns are making sure that we've got enough water to get us through a drought of record. So from a water planning standpoint, we're always looking at what's that worst drought we've ever experienced, and then looking at what we anticipate the demands to be during those conditions, and then making sure that we've got enough raw water and enough treatment capacity to deliver through that time period. So the Lavon Lake intake is essentially going to allow us to get deeper into Lavon Lake so that if we were in that drought of record, the worst drought that we've ever had, if that repeated, we'd be able to get more water out of Lavon than what we're currently able to get out. Additionally, we've got the Sister Grove Regional Water Resource Recovery Facility up there. That is a new wastewater plant that is in the ETJ of McKinney, just north of New Hope, east of 75. And that will be a water supply for us as well, because that'll be delivering treated water, clean water, into Lavon Lake that would then be a water supply. So those are some of the things that we've got in the works right now that'll kind of bridge our gap over the next decade or so. When we talk about water planning, we talk about very long planning horizons. So we recently completed a long-range water supply plan that looks out to 2080. And many of the projects that it takes to deliver on water needs take decades to complete. Some of the ongoing negotiations we've got going on right now have been talked about since the 90s. These things are very long lead time items that we've got to really be thoughtful about for decades to come. So this is just a simplified graph that kind of shows our existing supplies are shown in the green bar. What we're going to need for new supplies is the light blue above it. And then that dry year demand that we talked about is the blue bar. And so we're going to need to add on water supplies to make sure that we can meet that dry year demand. I also want to draw your attention to the orange, which is if we had not really leaned in and worked to implement conservation measures where people are using water more wisely, and we still had folks using water the way they did back in 2000 time frame, then we would be up at that orange line. So we have seen some success in having folks use water more wisely, which has reduced the water needed and reduced the capital requirements, which in turn makes the cost of water not quite as high. So in order to meet that growing need for water, there's a number of strategies. We looked at 25 different ways that that could be met in our long-range water supply plan, and I will say there is no one thing that's going to meet our region's needs. It's going to take an array of things to meet our region's needs. So something that we've got going on right now as an example is we're currently doing a feasibility study to see if something called aquifer storage and ASR, aquifer storage and recovery, would be something that works in our area. So that's where when you have excess, when it's not a drought condition, and you've got surface water available, you take that surface water and you put it in the ground. And you basically create this bubble of water supply, and then if a drought were to come about about, you can then pull it out. So you're storing water underground, aquifer storage, and then recovering it in that time of need. We're currently doing a feasibility study of that to see if it makes sense in our local geology. It's something that's very successful in San Antonio, very successful in El Paso, commonly done in Florida, some in California. We're not yet sure if it's going to make sense here. I think we've got much more like clay-like soil than some of the others, but it's something that we're looking at to see if it could make sense. We're also looking to negotiate and purchase existing supplies that are further away and not currently being made use of in parts of our state to the east. So the east part of our state is water rich, and there's a number of reservoirs out that way that are not being fully utilized. And so we have ongoing negotiations to try to buy some of that water and then convey it back here to the Metroplex. One of the things that I am really proud of how we're going about doing that is really looking for those opportunities for that to be a win-win. So we need water. We recognize that it's going to cost something. Folks to the east have water. And they could use some additional funding mechanisms. And so we're looking for ways to make that a win-win for the folks who have access to that water and could sell it to us. So there's some ongoing negotiations related to that. We also believe that ultimately new reservoirs will be needed. You all are probably a group of folks that watches the news fairly often, and you may see some articles about Marvin Nichols. Marvin Nichols is a proposed reservoir out in East Texas that we believe ultimately will be required. There is opposition to the construction of Marvin Nichols out in East Texas. We want to work with those folks. We recognize that it is an impactful project. There's a lot of land that is required. Thankfully, when we did BODARC, over 90% of the land bought was bought through a willing seller, willing buyer arrangement. So what you hear in the news stories isn't necessarily representative of our experience, but we do believe that ultimately Marvin Nichols would be needed. And so we're continuing to move that forward, but it's not going to be our next supply. We're going to have to get a few other things online before Marvin Nichols would make sense. And that's also a joint project that we're working with Upper Trinity Regional Water District and Tarrant Regional Water District, City of Dallas, and City of Irving on. So there's an array of options available to us. We are moving forward on many of them, trying to make sure that we can meet that need. And it's going to take a number of them.
So I think the mantra here is unprecedented growth and existing water supply and really trying to amplify our resources, to amplify our water resources to serve that growth. And as I started off and as we sat down, I talked about the governor's focus this session. So let's move quickly. I know we're limited on time. The 89th legislature kicked off on January the 14th. The regular session ends, June 2nd? June 2nd. So we've all heard the governor's priority, and not even ahead of that announcement, we knew that water was a big rock item there. So David Kelly, as I mentioned, leads our legislative team. You've had your ear to the ground. You've been listening to representatives and senators and prospective bills, especially. I think Senator Perry's been very vocal in working between legislative sessions on water specifically. Can you give us a feel for legislation you are hoping to see come out of the legislative session? And even with the governor's words, I know the devil's in the details. What would be most helpful to the district, and what form of assistance would benefit our region the most?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So there's been a couple of times where the state legislature has dedicated significant funds and it's been approved by the voters. So a number of years ago, $2 billion went into water infrastructure. Last session, $1 billion. And we've been able to make use of those funds. So in construction of Bodark Lake, we were able to essentially get low interest loans through the Texas Water Development Board that is saving money for our region. Additionally, the Sister Grove plant is funded through the Texas Water Development Board, where we've got low interest loans there as well. So by the state making investments, we've already been able in the last 5 years to have around $500 million in interest savings that is to the benefit of our region over the period of time that we'll be paying that debt back. So continued investment by the state will continue to pay dividends, and we are excited that potentially the rate of investment may increase. So the state really plays a key role in funding of water infrastructure. If they're not funding water infrastructure, then we're going to market and basically getting open market bond rates, which thankfully we've got a really good bond rating, so those aren't so bad, but it's better when we can get discounts from the state. So what we're super excited about is there's really some good energy around a generational investment in water infrastructure. And we've heard that from the governor over the weekend. We've heard it from both the House and from the Senate. And Senator Perry, who leads the Committee on Water, Agricultural, and Rural Affairs, has really been doing a tremendous job of vocalizing his plan throughout the legislature to get some excitement around it. So what's being talked about is a reoccurring revenue source of $1 billion per year into water infrastructure. That would just be tremendous. That would allow for the needs of folks like us in suburban communities, for rural communities, which are also challenged, urban, as well as for water supply planning and for aging infrastructure needs to be better accommodated. Additionally, there's talk about a $5 billion one-time investment from the surplus funds that they're looking at going into the session. As we're advocating with folks in Austin, and David does a tremendous job of really being visible down there and kind of trying to influence the direction that things are going for the benefit of our region. We're really looking for the legislature to provide some flexibility to the Water Development Board on how those funds are used on a year-by-year basis, as the Water Development Board is hearing from folks across the state as part of their annual process what the needs are. Thank you. And so that flexibility would be really beneficial to the state. Additionally, Senator Perry is in talks with folks about potential to pursue water from other states. And that's something that we're very much supportive of. That is something that could be of great benefit to us. And so we are continuing to keep our ear to the ground and trying to understand how those conversations are progressing. With that said, it takes another state to say yes, and to do so in a way that there's assurance that that water is going to be available for the long term. And then there's also this federal overlay of laws that we ran against in our zebra mussels issue that we've got to be cognizant of. And so while we're very supportive of pursuing water from other states, it's not assured at this time. And so we think it's really critical that we don't take other options off the table until there's assurance that that water can be reliably available for generations to come. We also are supportive of consideration for the state investing in greater ways. So the way that they've been doing it over the last decade or so is really low interest loans and getting a subsidy on the interest rate paid. There's talk about the state taking an ownership interest in actually constructing some of these mega projects that may be needed. Bodark Lake was the largest project we've ever undertaken at $1.6 billion. When we look to the future, the next one we're looking at is probably like $2 billion. And there's some projects that we look at that may be $7 to $10 billion. And so to be able to fund that on a ratepayer kind of approach, that is just, that's a huge, huge ask. And essentially what we're doing is we're asking folks who are here today in their water bills to pay for the infrastructure that's needed for the future residents and the future businesses. And so we're very supportive of the state taking a greater role in construction of some of that infrastructure, considering taking a greater role, such that the residents of today and their water bills are not fully being asked to fund that future investment. So that's something that we think could really have a huge impact on our ability to keep delivering what's needed to allow for that continued prosperity of the state of Texas and in our area, the North Texas region. So the number one ask that we have, and we're super excited that it appears to be on the radar of all the key players in Austin, is that adequate and sustainable funding for the Texas Water Development Board programs to allow for that secure water into the future here in the state of Texas.
Excellent. Well, that basically wraps us up. And Jenna, even though I guess our microphone's running out, is probably a good indicator that it's time to wrap things up. But before we do, we wanted to allow for some Q&A. So if there are any folks in the audience that have questions, Frederick Frazier.
Yeah, I have one. I met with the governor recently, and he was talking about bringing water from Houston. And obviously, it would have to come I-10 and then 20, which would come over to our 30 area to come up to us. How feasible is that, and what kind of time frame would we be looking at? I know this is a water session, but we've been down there long enough to know that this isn't. It's going to be a sessions because there's no way to do it. It took you from the 80s to get BODARC up and going from a project. So how sustainable, what kind of talk is that? Because that was new to us when shipping the water from Houston to here.
So there is talk about potentially getting water from Toledo Bend, which is east of Houston.
200, 300 years of water underneath of it?
Yeah. So Toledo Bend, it may be what he was referring to, and that's that $7 to $10 billion investment that I was talking about. That's the one. So when folks in Austin are talking about where is the water, Toledo Bend's the one that comes to mind, but it's just huge, huge investment. It is feasible. It's just, can we pay for it? I once did kind of just rough my envelope, not even our CFO getting involved, but my envelope numbers, and it would double our water rate if we tried to do something like that. So if the state is willing to really take an ownership interest, that's the wholesale rate, I should have said, not the retail rate, so don't get that scared. But that's, if the state is willing to really invest, something like that could happen. That's not what we look at as our next supply, just because of how costly it is. We're looking to meet the need in the most cost-effective manner possible. And something like that is not the most cost-effective manner.
The reason I asked is because he kept bringing up the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and that's where the water would have to go through to get to North Texas. And I was wondering how would that actually work, and where is the talks been with your office? And it doesn't sound like, it sounds like everybody's just, it's a theory right now.
Well, there is talks about water from other states, potentially having like an infrastructure network that's conveying water across the state. And the way that that's being envisioned is we would be one of the first delivery points and one of the first legs of that network because it is understood how big the needs are. I think we've done, David and folks in our office have done a really great job of helping the legislature and leadership to understand just how big the needs are, such that we're in the conversation. So it's wonderful to hear that when you're having the conversation, they're thinking about us. And I'm hopeful that there'll be that investment, and we'll be able to really get some good options on the table based on that investment.
Thanks. Is there a statutory or legal limit to the amount of water that can be drawn from the Red River?
Yes, there is.
Are you there?
So we have more water rights in Texoma than we we make use of today. And so there's a issue with the water quality of Texoma. It's really salty. So the way that we make use of it today is by blending it with other supplies to get the water quality to be in line with what we would all want it to be. And so we actually have additional rights in Texoma, and we actually have a discharge permit where we could go construct a reverse osmosis plant and put the brine into the Red River. Up to 70 million gallons per day is what it could take from a water quality standpoint. But the cost of that is like threefold what other options are. And so we're really trying to be good stewards of the financial resources we're entrusted with here in the North Texas area, and blend those waters and use more conventional treatment options to make use of them over time. So over our planning horizon, we'll make full use of the Texoma water that we've got rights to, but we got to bring in some additional freshwater supplies and then blend it to make full use of it. Good question. Yeah.
Good question. We had that at I think our last board meeting, somebody asked the same thing.
Yeah, just you know, that on the statewide level, what's our competition for growth in water usage compared to other parts of the state?
Yeah, so the question was on a statewide level, what's our competition in terms of growth? And I think that comes into play, right? So over the years, we've talked about getting water from Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a moratorium on the sale of water out of state, and it doesn't appear that they're really interested in lifting that at this time. And when you really start talking with folks, it's in some regard, I think, about that. It's about they don't want to allow Texas to grow, right? So I think there is some element of that. Also, it's really expensive to convey water. Like it's really expensive. So not even like I mentioned our next supply is looking at $2 billion investment, and that's not getting close to the state boundary yet. It's,
that's what they've been taking the water out.
Yeah, that's not the energy required.
Coming from the south, you're raising it some number of millions
Right.
of feet, right?
Yeah, so like to bring water from Toledo Bend, it'd probably be 4 pump stations along the way. And so it's just really, really expensive. So moving water is expensive. It's very heavy. And you think about how much we have around 160 gallons a person is how much folks are using in our area per day. So think about trying to convey 160 gallons for each person. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
I got 2 questions, one serious and one on the non-side. But let's take the non-serious first. Can you comment a little bit about the Lumber program?
About what? The what program?
The fishing.
Oh.
Lumber program.
Oh, the share lumber program. Yeah. Yeah.
He's going to go out this afternoon.
Oh, nice. Okay, headed to Boat Park. All right. So the share lumber program is a program that Texas Parks and Wildlife has in place where essentially if you catch a really big bass, 10 pounds, is that I'm not a fisher woman, but you catch a big bass, 10 pounds, they want you to hold on to it and turn it into them so that they can selectively breed it, and then release the babies, the fingerlings, back into our state's reservoirs.
And the fisherman's name is in the history books.
The fisherman's name's in the history books, there you
I
go.
recognize those. Sheriff, we haven't quite got to that. And you got a 7-pounder here. Oh, right, 8-pounder.
8.6.
Board members select a little more stretching. Each city has 2 members.
It's pretty easy. The city council, I say easy, I mean, the city council makes a decision to appoint their representatives, just as they do with every other board and commission. And so we serve 2-year terms.
Are they on term limits?
There are no term limits on the North Texas Municipal Water District Board. In fact, my predecessor, and I may need some help from those in the audience, there are 2 gentlemen that really did some heavy lifting for the water district and served for, Joe Joplin and Charlie McKissick served for, I don't know, 20 plus years. And then we have some on the board. Terry Sam Anderson has served for how many, Randy, over 30 years, 40 years?
Yeah, it's going to go 40.
Pressing 40. Randy and I have only been there for, what, 3 or 4? So I don't think I'll be making that 20-year mark or anything. But anyway, it's 2-year terms and we serve at the pleasure of council.
How does the city become a member? I mean, does everyone, like,
I'll let you.
Yeah, so we had 10 original member cities, and over time, we have added on 3. The enabling legislation that was approved by the legislature outlines a process by which the district can add on members. That process starts with a formal request from a city, including a petition with a certain number of landowners making that petition. The board of directors of the water district considers if that is in the interest of the region. So is it of the benefit to the region to add on this additional city? If so, then there's a number of steps outlined in the enabling legislation that includes a vote of the property owners within that community. We do have taxing authority as an organization. We've never made use of that taxing authority, but having that vote is really a critical step along that process.
then if a city is not represented on the board, they have to make private arrangements to get water?
You know, that's,
Or how does that work?
you want to take it? Sure.
I think the customer count right now is 30, is it, I was gonna say 34, are we at 36? Between 34 and 30, she would know, 36 customers. So we have, through our board, we have communications, the board of directors, we have established a communications process so that our customer cities feel heard on issues or concerns that may come up. And they also, if your question is, how do you get water if you're not a member, then they can come to the district as in a customer status. And then also there's a very real and active culture of responding to our customers really as in the same kind of spirit and with the same kind of goal toward response as the member cities. So I think that if you talk to our customers, they would say that the district is responsive and there's a door for communication there. Absolutely.
One of the things that's really cool about our board is that they regularly are working on behalf of the region. And so when they're considering taking action on a given item, they're not just looking at it through the lens of the community that appointed them. They're looking at it through the lens of the region as a whole. And so that is just really cool to see in action when I see the folks on our board deliberating on various matters. So I would say that our board does a really great job of also representing the interests of the customers as well.
All right, any other questions?
Before you take another question, I want to give a shout out to City Manager Paul Grimes, because Paul led a group of member city managers as we were kind of struggling to come up with this customer premium, actually what we charge for water, because there's a little bit of a delta between our customers and our members. So Paul led out with the member cities and arranged to have a conversation with the customer city managers, and really this was after the board and the directors kind of got to a little bit of an impasse on this issue. So just as I was gifted to be in the room when they presented their findings, to Jenna's point, there's such a regionalism that between, in this case, members and customers, to see those two groups come together and to present a final solution, which the board has approved. It's kind of, I don't use this word lightly, but it was inspirational, because as Jen said, you don't see that often. So that hasn't been too long ago. So I thanked you then, but I want to thank you in front of these folks.
All right, any other questions? Okay, well, we want to thank you, young lady, for the gift to your party. It's good to testify and enjoy the evening. Okay? All right, you enjoyed it very much. Great job.
I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want you to mark your calendar. What do we say, Rob, June the 4th?
Yes.
All right.
First Tuesday of June.
All right.
First Tuesday of June.
Yeah, first Tuesday in June, it's June the 3rd. I haven't been down here. So, no meeting in May because of elections, okay? Any suggestions on, topics, okay? Let us know. Contact Robert or myself and say, hey, I want to hear about the airport. We see a lot of news on the airport. What was the news with President Trump and the $500 billion AI contribution? And did I hear read right, that Princeton, Texas is one of the locations that's under consideration for an AI plant? Did y'all hear that? Or is that part 019? Could have been, okay. But thank y'all for coming, and I thank you. Yes?
About half a dozen, that's what I did yet.
Yeah, oh, be sure you sign. Yeah, if you haven't signed, sign in, so you'll be on the list. And one other damn thing, be sure my wife can read your email address and your name, or you're in trouble. Thank y'all very much, and I thank y'all for seeing you.